For 6 weeks, she never left the baby's side. Not once. Patrick thought it was sweet. The vet had said she would deliver within 2 weeks. Then one night, something went wrong. And what the vet said after that changed the way Patrick saw that dog forever. Before we go any further, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another moving story like this one. And write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. She's there again. Patrick looked up from his coffee. Sarah was standing in the hallway, her voice soft, her eyes on the nursery door. She hasn't moved since 6 this morning, Sarah said. Patrick walked to the doorway. Nell was on the floor, beside Clara's crib. She was always on the floor, beside Clara's crib. Nell was a golden retriever, 65 pounds of warm golden fur, with a face so gentle it made strangers stop on the street. She had been with Patrick for 4 years, since before the marriage, since before any of this. She had slept at the foot of his bed every night for 4 years without exception, until Clara came home. Clara was 3 weeks old, blonde, impossibly small, her tiny fist curled beside her cheek as she slept. She wore a yellow onesie that was still slightly too big for her. Nell had met her at the door the day they brought her home. She had sniffed the car seat once, then walked directly to the nursery. She hadn't really left since. Nell was 5 months pregnant, visibly so. Her belly was low and round, and her movements were slower than usual, more deliberate. Patrick had told himself it was instinct, maternal warmth extended toward the nearest small thing. He had almost convinced himself. One evening, Patrick stood in the nursery doorway and watched for a long time without going in. Nell's eyes were open, not the drowsy half-attention of a dog resting, but something more focused. She was watching Clara's chest rise and fall, rise and fall. Her eyes moved with each breath, steady and precise, like she was counting them. Patrick stood there until his coffee went cold. He didn't go in. He didn't know why. He thought about it the next morning and the morning after that. He started noticing things he hadn't noticed before. Nell didn't just stay in the nursery. She stayed in a specific spot, always to the left of the crib, always between the door and Clara. Never on the other side, never at the foot, always exactly there, like she had measured the distance and decided. Patrick mentioned it to Sarah one evening. Sarah looked at him for a moment. "She's a dog," she said. "She found a warm spot she likes." Patrick nodded. He didn't say anything else, but he started watching more carefully. He noticed that Nell never slept deeply in the nursery. In other rooms, the kitchen, the living room, she slept the way dogs sleep, heavy and still, twitching sometimes, completely gone. But in the nursery, she was always half awake, one ear forward, one eye never fully closed, like she was listening for something specific, like she was waiting for something she knew was coming. Patrick didn't tell Sarah this either. He wasn't sure he had the words for it yet. One morning, Patrick clipped Nell's lead. He stood in the nursery doorway and called her. Nell looked at him, then at Clara, then back at him. She didn't move. Patrick walked to her, clipped the lead to her collar, and walked back to the door. Nell stood up slowly, took 2 steps toward him, stopped, looked back at Clara, and sat down. Patrick stood in the doorway, holding the lead. Nell looked at him steadily. Not aggressive, not afraid, just certain, like she had made a decision a long time ago and wasn't interested in revisiting it. Patrick unclipped the lead, put it back on the hook by the door, and went to make coffee. He didn't try again. The whelping box was still in the garage, flat-packed and unassembled. He had meant to set it up in the laundry room, somewhere quiet, away from the household noise. Every time he went to get it, he ended up in the nursery doorway instead, watching Nell, watching Clara, something stopping him that he couldn't name. That week, Sarah's mother came to visit. She stood in the nursery doorway and looked at Nell for a long moment. "A pregnant dog in the nursery," she said. "The mess alone when she delivers. You need to think about this, Patrick. What happens when she goes into labor in here?" Patrick looked at Nell. Nell looked at Clara. "I'll sort it out," Patrick said. He didn't sort it out. 3 days later, Patrick went to the nursery at midnight. He didn't know what woke him. He stood in the doorway in the dark. Nell was standing beside the crib, not lying down, standing, her nose level with the mattress. Clara was making those small sounds she made sometimes, soft, rhythmic, barely audible. Nell was listening, her ears forward, her whole body perfectly still, like whatever Clara was saying was the most important thing she had ever heard. Patrick stood there for a long time. He went back to bed, but he didn't sleep. The next morning, he found Nell licking Clara's forehead slowly and carefully. Clara's eyes were open, watching the dog above her with that unfocused newborn gaze. Not afraid, just watching. Like this was entirely normal. Like this had always been normal. Nell looked up when Patrick came in, those dark, steady eyes. Then she turned back to Clara. Patrick stood in the doorway. He thought about the whelping box in the garage. He didn't move. For nights later, he woke at 2 a.m. to a sound he didn't recognize, low, rhythmic, coming from down the hall. He got to the nursery doorway and stopped. Nell was in labor. She was lying on the floor beside Clara's crib, not in the laundry room, not in the whelping box he'd never set up. She was here beside Clara, where she had always been. Patrick called Dr. Foster. He answered on the second ring and was there in 14 minutes. The first 2 puppies came quickly. The third didn't. Patrick watched Dr. Foster's face change. That careful, controlled stillness that meant something was wrong. "I need you to step back," Dr. Foster said quietly. Patrick stepped back. He stood in the corner of the nursery with his back against the wall and watched the vet work, trying to remember how to breathe. Clara was awake in her crib. She wasn't crying. She was making those small sounds, soft and rhythmic. Patrick looked at Nell. Nell's eyes were open, fixed on Clara. Even now, even through this, she wanted to go to her. She didn't move. Dr. Foster worked without speaking. The room was very quiet. Just the vet's hands, Nell's breathing, Clara's small sound, and Patrick's back against the wall, counting seconds he couldn't name. "Come on," Dr. Foster said quietly, not to Patrick, but to Nell. "Come on, girl." 11 minutes passed. Then the third puppy came, then the fourth, then the fifth. It took 40 minutes total. 5 puppies were born, and Nell was stable. Patrick sat down on the floor of the nursery and put his face in his hands. He stayed like that for a long time. Dr. Foster sat down across from him. He was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something about the baby?" he said. Patrick looked up. "Clara," Dr. Foster said, "how long has Nell been staying close to her?" "Since we brought her home." 6 weeks. Dr. Foster nodded slowly. "Did she ever seem agitated when Clara was near? Ever try to move her away from the puppies?" "No," Patrick said. "Never. She just stayed." Dr. Foster was quiet for a moment. "There's something that happens sometimes," he said carefully, "with dogs who are pregnant and under stress. They identify a surrogate, someone they trust to care for their young if something goes wrong." He paused. "It's instinct, ancient. They don't choose consciously, but they choose." Patrick couldn't speak. "Nell chose Clara," Dr. Foster said, 6 weeks ago. "She's been introducing them ever since. Every day she spent beside that crib, she was showing her puppies where home was, who to trust." He looked at Nell. She wasn't protecting the baby. He paused. She was introducing them. Patrick looked at Nell. She was lying on her side, exhausted, her 5 puppies pressed against her. Her eyes were still on Clara, still watching even now. Patrick got up slowly. He lifted Clara from the crib carefully the way he always did and sat down on the floor beside Nell. He placed Clara gently on the blanket between them. The puppies stirred. One of them, the smallest, the last born, lifted its head. It moved toward Clara slowly, blindly, until it found her hand. Clara's fingers curled around it. She made that soft sound, the sound she made only for Nell. Patrick had heard it 100 times. He had never understood what it meant until now. Nell watched. Her tail moved once. Patrick put his hand on Nell's head. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have understood sooner." Nell looked at him, then at Clara, then at the puppies. She closed her eyes. For the first time in 6 weeks, her body relaxed completely. She had done what she came to do. Did this story touch your heart? If yes, write yes in the comments. Like this video and subscribe to our channel. Would you have kept Nell beside the baby the way Patrick did? Yes or no? Let us know below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.